There we are. Hi, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are on this planet that we call Earth. I'm Doc Skinner, and this is Doc Skinner Podcast. And today we've got a very special guest who's going to join us. We're going to talk a little bit about what she's going to be doing at Disclosure Experience 2025, coming up in May and June, or excuse me, May and June. And really excited to talk about it. For those that aren't aware of DE25, I'll be playing a promo for it in just a little bit, but I want to introduce our guest, film actress, experiencer, and speaker, Camille James Harman. How are you today?
I'm great, Doc. How are you?
Doing good. A little rushed, dressed up. Had to do an interview today and ran a little longer, so I apologize that we're running late today. We can equal that out if we need to. So, Camille, your latest, I mean, you've been doing a lot of projects, especially these new kind of short films on the internet that are really kind of
Yes.
taking off.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I saw it. So it was cool. I was like, wow, you were keeping busy, and that's good. Um, and then before your last big movie, if I'm correct, was Vice.
Yes, my last big movie. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a really I was intrigued. It was a really good movie, and you got to play a pretty cool part. I mean, you were the president's
The
like
counselor
staff
to the
member.
president and the counselor to the vice president, Mary Madeline, who lives in New Orleans with her husband, James Carville. And I got some good press because I'm from New Orleans. And so I thought, let me pitch the local news and see if they'd be interested in a pitch like, um, New Orleanian is playing New Orleanian in Oscar nominated films. So I got a lot of
Hmm.
interviews. It was really fun. And I wrote Mary Madeline a letter and sent her some presents through her church. I called her church. I knew where she went to church. And I found out and I wrote her there. They said they would accept whatever I sent over there. And that's how she got the package. And she wrote me back, and I got her letter the day after the Oscars. And we did win one Oscar. So that was a pretty good day.
That is pretty awesome. I I've been wanting to ask, what was it like portraying a real human being that's still around, not just historical, but someone that's
Yeah.
living, breathing? Did you get? And you said you did the letters. Did you ever get to meet her or
I have
speak with
not
her? Like,
met her, but I had friends that talked to her about me. Um, and one of the things that made me nervous playing a real person is she's taller than I am and thinner than I am, so I was self-conscious about that. But one of my friends from high school, her daughter was in the same sorority with Mary Madeline's daughter. And so my friend was at the sorority event and said, "Hey, my friend from high school is playing you in a movie." And Mary Madeline asked her, "Is she cute?" And that's all she cared about. So I was like, I'm trying here, I'm trying. But I got cast as a lookalike. So, and I still kind of have the haircut that she had back then because it kind of worked out. It was really, really fun. I got to work with Christian Bale and Steve Carell and all these amazing actors. Amy Adams and I even had a little scene, but it got cut. So it
oh,
was amazing. It was the best time.
yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand. There's a lot of good stuff that gets cut. Well, and ends up
I
on the
know.
editing room floor, as they say.
Yeah.
And being an editor, I know, and I've told people
It,
this is my
yeah.
explanation of being an editor. When you watch a film or you listen to a song or an album, what you're truly hearing is the frustrations of the engineer or the editor going, "That's it. They're not going to know the difference," because we're perfectionists.
Yeah,
It's never going
I I
to.
had I shot about 6 lines of dialogue for me, and only two of them made it. But that was enough for me to get residuals. So I was like, "Thank you,
Yeah.
God." And I have friends who've done entire, huge, long scenes, days of shooting, and they're just totally cut, and it's devastating because they thought they were going to get residuals and all, and they didn't. And it's a huge financial loss.
Well, I mean, at least you weren't Eric Stoltz. He was in Back to the Future. He was originally the Marty McFly. They shot most of the
Oh,
movie, and then
oh,
they
I never
they
knew
fired
that.
him and brought in Michael J. Fox and reshot everything. So yeah, there's clips, and you see all the same scenes, but it's Eric Stoltz, and it just didn't have the same thing. He's a great actor. Don't get me wrong.
I
Ever
know.
since I saw Mask, I was like, this guy's brilliant. Um, so so how long have you been in the movie industry?
I've been in the movie industry. I would say I started acting kind of late. I wasn't a child actor. I started acting in college, but not as part of college, but in community theater while I was in college. So I started in theater, and then I moved to Virginia. That was in Louisiana. Then I moved to Virginia, and I was still doing theater. And then I decided to go to grad school, and I moved back to Louisiana to New Orleans, and I had a full assistantship to the University of New Orleans to do grad school. So I got that MFA, and they were really cool about working while I was in school, which a lot of schools aren't. But since there's so
Mhm.
much filming there, they said, if you want to get an agent, get a couple days work here and there on a big movie, please, we'll let you
Yeah.
skip class and then you can come back and tell us all about it. So by the time I graduated, I had film credits, I had my SAG card. It was really great.
Wow. Yeah, I never got to that sad card. I usually would work. Well, I didn't usually. I did. I worked over in Orlando for Disney Universal Studios, where they had the right to work state. Because SAG is an amazing thing. Art is amazing. It's just really hard when you're starting. So unless you get a good role
Oh,
like that, you get a nice check, you can then get it.
yeah.
But
I don't.
that's one thing I just haven't accomplished yet, was getting a SAG card. But
Yeah. Well, I'm now FICOR. A few years ago, I went FICOR, which is it's like it's a long story, but it basically means I can do union and non-union, and I still pay my dues to SAG, but it's a loophole, and it allows me to do a lot more work. It was just getting ridiculous, and I'm in my late 50s. I'm not going to wait around forever, and I'm able to do all these vertical films like you were talking about,
they're
tons of
called vertical films.
commercials. Yeah, they're called verticals. That's one of the
Okay.
names for them. But these short form, they're kind of like short form romantic
Soap
dramas,
operas.
usually soap opera
Yeah.
type. The writing is sometimes a little sketchy. Sometimes it seems like AI wrote it. And they're very well organized. The people that make these verticals are like, it's like jumping into, a really well-oiled machine, and they tend to hire each other and work over and over. I've done like 7 or 8 of them, and
Wow.
they're fun. I mean, they don't pay great, but they're really fun, and they get huge visibility. I got interviewed by the New York Times for one of the ones that I did. Um,
Nice.
yeah, and so they're fun. And so what else have I done recently after Vice? I did Shameless. I did an episode of Shameless. I did a Lifetime movie. So here and there, but it's really slowed down in LA. There's a lot of competition, as you know, from other states and other countries, and
Right.
so they're kind of scrambling to keep the industry going here, to be honest. And then with the fires and the cost of living and all the other things that they don't know how to run the state right here. And so it's been a big problem. A lot of people
Yeah.
leaving. They can't afford to live here if there's no work.
Right. Because I mean, the living cost is already, that New York
Yeah,
is just
yeah,
skyrocketed.
yeah.
When people tell me what their rent is, I'm just like blown away. It's
I
like, how do
know,
you
I
make that
know,
much money? You still got other bills. So
I
it's an
know.
amazing thing. Well, one of the other things that you do is you speak about UFOs and your experience, and you were a writer at one time with, was it UFO magazine, if I'm correct? Or,
I did. I wrote for UFO magazine from 2000 to very early 2005. And I was first working under Vicky and Don Ecker when they owned it. And then they
Mhm.
sold it to Bill Burns, and I worked under him. And it was really fun because I was covering a lot of different things, but mostly I was covering the MUFON meetings in Los Angeles. So I was going to the MUFON meetings anyway, and since they hired me, I covered a theatrical production about alien abduction downtown.
Oh,
That was really
okay.
neat. And then they basically said, "Would you like to cover the MUFON meetings?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I'm already going, so that would be great." So then I got extra access to all of the speakers, and I was in the golden age of ufology. I was there in the late '90s, and then writing in the early 2000s, and
Yeah.
I got to make friends with some of these people that are legends, and it's
Yeah.
fun. It
And
was
once,
it was a great gig.
yeah, and once you get into this communities, it's just
Oh, it's
because
so
you
addictive.
yeah, it's like my brain is a sponge. It's like I can't get enough. And that's the thing. I think that they should start a rating system with information.
Mm.
Like Roswell and stuff is like first grade stuff, and then you have quantum physics and parallel realities is like your junior, senior year level.
I
Because
know.
I'm ready for the next step. I just feel like everybody's repeating a lot of this regurgitation, basically, of stuff that's been said by us for years, but not until Thanksgiving when the UFOs were over Washington, D.C. Now everybody's like, oh, there are UFOs.
I know things change so much. And what was interesting for me, even though I had these abduction experiences starting in 1995 that just took over my life. I mean, I moved to LA with my boyfriend from New Orleans. We're both actors. We had just done Richard III. We felt like we were hot stuff. So we were like, we're going to LA. And then as soon as I get to LA, I have abductions. Like, what the hell? And it just rocked my whole world. And I was so I was just traumatized, and I was so derailed, because I am
It,
I'm an extrovert, so I talk a lot. So I couldn't keep quiet about it. And my
well, 'cause
boyfriend and I
that is your
broke up over it.
paradigm.
Everything just shattered, and I had to kind of, I mean, I still acted, but I ended up meeting my husband, who's also an experiencer. Well, I went to England. I mean, I did all these things to just, find the answers. We're all after the truth. So I was like, I'm going to go
Yeah.
to the Roswell event and do the 50th anniversary Roswell conference. And I went to that, and it was amazing. And then I went to England, and I walked in the crop circles in 1998, and that was amazing. And then and then I met my husband at a gas station in Malibu because we started talking about my bumper sticker that said "I love England," and it turned out
Hmm.
he was a UFO experiencer. We started talking at the gas station and swapped business cards, and then we had a date, and here we are. And that was 1998, so we're
Wow.
still married. So it's just been a whirlwind of research and experiences and synchronicities and ups and downs, ups and downs, for sure.
Yeah. Wow. That's just, and here's the thing: most of us experiencers, we tend to find each other, you
Oh
know.
yeah, that's my
And
superpower.
yeah, and another thing that I've recently noticed and have publicly mentioned is that I've just remembered that at one well during my childhood I was a gateway kid. You know, the
Oh
gate.
yeah.
Yeah, and I when I started remembering it because they were showing a lot of it on TikTok, and it was that audio with the at the beginning. It says you are going to experience this and all this. And it was supposed to be a hearing test when actually it was how to have an out of body experience test. And I remember the cards. I remember the bubblegum liquid, the what do you call it? This what do you call it for cavities?
Yeah, that
The
that dye that you would swizzle it,
Yeah,
and then like the
or the
dentist
pill,
used to
you
give
chew
us
it
that
up.
too.
Yeah, it was a pill you chew up and make little spots in your teeth and stuff. And they say that was to calcify our pineal gland, and they were searching us out. When me and many others like me, we all thought that everybody was going through this. When we realized it wasn't everybody. And this one gentleman, he's been collecting all this information, and he talks about, you know, do you remember this? Does anybody recognize this? And I remember the homework assignments, not homework, but assignments because they wouldn't let us take it home, and all the crazy puzzles we did. And it's just crazy that in the past year, all of these gay kids and myself are all remembering this all of a sudden. And then someone suggested, well, what if the liquid or the two tablets they gave us was something to help us forget? Because none of us really remember what we did. You know, we just remember being a part of it. And
Hmm.
now it's all coming back. So we're thinking, whatever they gave us, is it worn off after 40 years or whatever it is? So yeah, that's something I wanted. There you go. That's something I wanted to kind of bring up at the event one of the weekends as well, because it's I wouldn't say it's new, but it's starting to catch traction on TikTok and other places, and people are coming forward, and even some of my friends, Apollo, Asteria, and a few others. Are also gay kids because when I mentioned, does anybody know about this? And they're like, yeah, me, I was one, and it's my
You
friends.
know,
So
it's funny because I got really into that conversation on X, and it was going around, and we were all chiming in, and I had been assessed for gate, but I didn't, as I recall, I didn't make the cut. But I went to a few of the gate classes before they kicked me out, and so I remember some of it. I have really bad math skills, like not good at all. I have a language brain. I don't have a math brain. But anyway, my friend Karen was in it, and she very vividly recalls men in suits taking her out of that class and going in
Yeah.
a room alone with her, and she doesn't remember what they were doing in there, but that was a very distinct memory for her. And she's a math genius and music genius. So maybe I'm lucky I didn't have the math skills. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, what some of us have come or, we're guessing really, but is that they were breaking us up into two camps, the obedient and rebels,
Mm,
and that had the talents. Okay. And what they did is, well, what we're assuming is that they somehow, through hypnosis and stuff, made it to where we would never fully succeed in life. So we'd always be held down, right? We'd never be fully, our full capabilities would never happen. And if they
wow.
did, we would be their enemy, basically. Because the other group are the obedient ones. They're the ones that they put in high power places in the military and government offices and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. And so the ones that were rebellious, me, um, they made it to where, because I have so much failure in my life. I mean, I've had so many things go wrong, and I worked really hard for it, and I just didn't. Anyway, it made sense when someone suggested that. I was like, well, that would explain a lot of things, because I worked so hard, and things kept just stumbling, or Hollywood red tape. I was supposed to be in four films
Wow.
with DiCaprio. I was his. I used to have him a long time ago,
Wow.
and his
That's
father, George
fascinating.
DiCaprio,
I
back
hadn't
then.
heard that. Wow. Well,
Yeah.
part of me, I wonder every time I mean, I live here in Los Angeles, but I've lived other places, and we took a break. My husband and I moved to Arizona for 10 years to Tucson, and that had a great UFO community, and we just dropped out of, Hollywood, and he was doing astrology for a living, and I just was being a mom. Our son was young; he was 3 when we moved
Mhm.
there, and we just enjoyed a very simple life there. Um, Eventually, he got bored, and he kept asking me to go back to LA, and then I started, thinking, okay, yeah, maybe let's try it again. So we went back in 2015, and after 10 years in Tucson. And during that time, though, I had this total detour. I had a really wild detour because I went into the mode of I was writing my book, which I haven't finished yet, and I came to the end and I was like, I don't know what this is. I'm so over it. Like, God, show me what this was so I can move on with my life. And all
Yeah.
these books
Right.
started coming my way that were like aliens or demonic. Like all these, books by evangelicals, and then David Nigel Kerner's book, Gray Aliens and the Harvesting of Souls. All these books that started making me think, oh my God, is this just like demonic? And I've just been like spinning my wheels, and so I totally dropped out, and I went to church. I just went in deep into like Catholicism, Latin Mass, for a long
Hmm.
time, and I dropped out and I stopped going to UFO conferences, and then I moved here, and then I started getting interested again around 2022, and so much had changed. Like the New York Times thing had happened. I didn't know any of this. I didn't know about the New York Times article. I was just not in it for like 9 years, and then when I came back to it,
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, I have to catch up. Like all this stuff's happening. And I no longer thought it was all demonic. I thought maybe that's one part of it, but I don't think it's the whole thing. I changed my mind, and I'm going back in because it's getting really interesting and things are changing. And so I've been in ever since. So there's a little part of me that's cautious about all this. And I don't like to jump on the alien
Well,
bandwagon like it's all great and it's all wonderful. So I am cautious, and I'm very cautious
yeah.
because I've had my lab experiences, and I was not happy about that. So, I still think like a journalist. I'm always taking in information, filing it away, saving it for later because things will come along that will
Mhm.
fill it out. And I still haven't made up my mind, and I still haven't finished my book, but maybe that's because of my programming from Kate. I don't know. Gate or something else.
It's something. Are you a military brat?
I am, well, I have a long, weird story, but
Sorry, I know some people don't know.
yes, I
Military
have
brat is just
military
no children.
relatives, but I wasn't a military brat that moved around. My father that adopted me was in the National Guard during Vietnam. But what I find interesting is I was a NASA adjacent brat. Okay, so stay with me. My
Oh wow.
uncle in
Okay.
Huntsville was a mechanical engineer under Werner von Braun, his whole career from the 60s
Wow.
till he died. And well, not till Werner von Braun died, but he stayed at NASA. And um, I would ask him about this, and I would say, Uncle Jack, what the hell? You have to tell me. I'm your niece. This happened to me. It's very serious. And he said, I don't know anything, and if it's true, it's NSA, and they're never going to tell you. So you just have to get over it. And I can tell you stories about visiting him at Huntsville and going to the space center where they have like the tourist thing and the gift shop and all
Mm-hmm.
that.
Correct.
Um, one year I went around 2000 and they had the gift shop full of alien stuff. They had alien t-shirts, they had mugs, they had figurines like the reptilians, Nordics. I was like, what is happening? I was so excited. And then I went back a couple years later to visit him, and all of that was gone from the gift shop. It was nothing alien. It was all NASA. NASA project, this project, that. Not one picture of a gray, nothing. And so I almost thought, wow, were they about to do a disclosure back then? And then they pulled the plug and they changed their mind. That's what I thought happened. But and then I visited
Yeah.
once in Huntsville. My mom was cleaning the house for a lady who was in a wheelchair, and her husband worked on the Chandra telescope, and we went to their house so she could like clean her house. And this guy had a science fiction library in his house, and when you walked in, it was Thanksgiving, and they had their nativity scene set up already in the foyer. So we walked
Okay.
into the foyer, and there's this Jesus stable with the whole thing with grays on the roof. He had glued little plastic grays to the roof of the Jesus
Yeah.
stable. And I had that at my house. I was like, oh my God, who does this? Who does this? But me and this scientist who works for NASA, we put aliens on the roof of the
Yeah.
stable. What is going on? So just all these weird things. So I wonder if I got put in a program because I lived with my uncle when I was a child, around, I don't know, 2 to 3 years old. And I may have been, because they
Mhm.
were considering adopting me, I may have been put in a program like just by going to the base doctor or something. I mean, I have no idea. My brain just goes all over. And now his daughter is the payload manager of the space station. So she won't tell me anything
There you
either.
go.
So, yeah,
That two
could be
degrees of
that. Could be
separation.
that.
That's
Could be
that's
that.
amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's how my
And the
brain
fact
works.
that
I
he
just file it
said
away and I
he
wonder.
said if it's anything, it's NSA. That was crazy.
NSA. And then I have an NSA story. So once I was on a film set with a girl in bikinis, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a great story because we were freezing cold shooting a
All right.
bikini beach scene in Venice, and while it was at night on the beach, and while we were not being utilized, they had us in this RV, a whole bunch of us in bikinis hanging out, staying warm. So I started
Mm-hmm.
talking about alien stuff, and this one girl, I think I mentioned the blue beam that comes over you.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, I
Mm-hmm.
know the blue beam. And I was like, okay, let's go talk. So we went down the hall, we're talking in our bikinis, and she goes, oh my God, I have to tell you this. She tells me this story. She says, okay, I grew up in Maryland, and my dad was a real high up in the NSA. And I said, okay. And she said, stay with me. So he took me on this camping trip when I was a little girl, and he lit a fire, and we're looking at the stars, father-daughter trip. And he says, what if I told you God was an alien and this was all just a big experiment? That's what she told me. Like, I would have never heard that crazy story if I hadn't opened my big mouth. So, literally,
Wow.
it's my superpower. I can go to parties, film sets, wherever. I meet people at the gas station. I open my mouth or I
Mhm.
wear my t shirts and bumper stickers and whatever, and people come up to me in the
Yeah.
airport and they tell me their stories. So I'm very extroverted and I'll keep doing that.
That's fantastic, and it really says a lot because it's that attraction, like I mentioned earlier. We all seem to find each other,
Hmm.
um, and then there's certain people you who are walking billboards, so people can go, oh, okay, this person's safe to talk to, and
Yeah.
that they all come to you with their stories. That is a superpower. That is an amazing superpower.
Well,
I
I don't
love it. I
care.
love it.
Like people say, aren't you afraid to talk like that? Don't you? Aren't you worried people think you're crazy? And I just say, you know what? No, not anymore. I don't care. I mean, I never did care. I was out of the closet from the 90s. I was doing
Yeah.
podcasts and documentaries and TV shows back then. And people always thought, oh, is it going to affect her acting career? And back then I thought, well, they're not going to put it together. And now I'm like, it'll probably help my acting career. The world is so crazy. Like, I mean, golly,
Right.
I'm normal compared to most people in Hollywood. So, alien schmalians. It's just, hey, we're living through it all right now. This is the wake up period. Wakey, wakey. So
And
this is
I believe
I'm
we
going to
all chose it.
fly my freak flag. I don't care.
Yeah, and I believe all of us here, we chose to be here for this moment,
Mm,
for this, not experience, but time in history.
yeah.
Um, a little bit of it's scary, but it's exciting at the same time. So,
Well, I've been
uh,
thinking, Doc, too, about my age, okay? Because I'm 58 and I'm
okay,
in, support groups and different things about this. And I've noticed if the beings know the timeline, if they know something about time and divine timing that we don't know, they've been working on us since we were kids, probably,
yeah,
most of us, right? And now we're at this age of authority. We're like, people in our 50s, 60s, 70s. We've been in this for a while. And it's like they've prepared this whole group of people
generation.
to be
Yeah,
useful at this time, to educate, to acclimate, to be mouthpieces in one way or another. And so I really do believe it's all going down because the beings would not have wasted their time with us if they knew this timeline. They would have waited for my son's generation or another generation and they would have done it's all going down because they've prepared this generation. I mean, I just feel that so strongly.
yeah. No, I truly do too. Back in the '90s, um, yeah, 93 or 4 is when I learned about what Pleiadians were. And the internet was still new.
Mm.
We had AOL and all that. And my first experience with any kind of what's called a conspiracy were the cell towers because the
Oh, yeah.
frequencies same as brain frequencies. And I came up with a theory about the Atlanta Olympic bombing, and the bomb went off in the crowd in Atlanta
Hmm.
Olympics, and they were surrounded for the first time having cell towers at an Olympics for all the cell phones. And I thought, what a perfect place to test mind control where you bypass the language barriers and go straight to thought. And
Mm.
it's quiet, but we hear it in our brains. So what's a better place to do it at an Olympic event? We have people from all over the world because when the bomb went off, it went boom and everybody jolted. And then they slowly stood up and then they all walked to the exits like no big deal, except for one child who ran through the crowd crying for their mother. Everybody else, it was like they're zombies and they all walked to the nearest exits. And so that's
Yeah.
my theory on that. But anyway.
Well, frequency weapons are real, and one of the things
Mhm.
I studied as part of this obsession is targeted individuals, frequency weapons, that kind of thing. The kind of work that Sabrina Wallace is doing, which I don't know if we can even say that name in this podcast, but very interesting revelations about science and our bodies and the capacity to control us and utilize us very much like the Matrix as a power source to run machines that they're putting in our bodies and all this crazy stuff. So, yeah, we need to be very aware of how we can be manipulated from outside.
Yeah, I want to show you something real quick. This was a New York Post 3 weeks ago. Let me share this real quick. That's going to be this one. All right. I don't know if you got to see this. It's only 40 seconds long, but we were talking about these weapons. I thought this crowd.
I did see that.
Walk out fast. You hear the noise?
Hmm.
Hold on. Here it comes. They're all just demonstrating, and then I guess the government came out with this machine. Here we go. Boom! Look at that. I mean, totally look choreographed. It was
Yep.
so perfect, and that was because of this sonic, like an LRAD weapon that they use
Mm.
for crowd control. Well, you see
Hmm.
how they can control the crowd and part the waters like Noah or
Yeah.
Moses. Sorry, wrong guy. Both water deal. So, um, yeah, it's a real thing. It's not a conspiracy theory. This is technology that's out there. And yet, even though the information is out there that this stuff is real, people still want to go, no, that's just movie magic, and it's not real. Um,
They don't get educated on it. I mean, the internet is amazing. You can go get educated on whatever interests you, and that stuff is real.
yeah, I
And
call it
I
the
mean, I
University of
remember
Euclid.
I was learning from Dr. Nick Begich, who's now a congressman in
Yes.
Alaska. He wrote a book, Angels Don't Play This Harp, right? And he came to MUFON LA and he did a presentation about harp and all the other interesting technologies out there. And he brought this thing, it was like a little Sony Walkman, but instead of wearing headphones, you put it on your neck and he would play it and then you would hear the music in your head. And it was, I guess, bone conducting or whatever. But he was
Yes,
basically
in the air.
proving you don't need your ears to hear. They can override your ears or something. And I was like, wow. And
Straight to the brain.
I was his
I
demonstration
actually
model. So I
spoke with
felt
him.
it.
I
Yeah.
called him, and we had a great talk at his place in Alaska. And he was talking. Wait, hold on. Was it Nick or was his brother? Yeah, he's the one in Alaska, right?
Mm-hmm.
From Alaska. Okay. So it
Mm-hmm.
was him, and we talked about it. And I brought this up, and I was sure it was probably what I brought up, but I just wanted to ask. I said, could this help deaf people? Could they utilize this, because we're working on it? And that just blew my mind. That they just bypass the ear straight into the brain, and people that have hearing impairment, they'll be able to hear. It's an amazing time to be alive.
It
And I
is.
and I just have, like, this next year, it's going to just be leaps and bounds with
It
all the
is.
AI doing everything, even though it's scary too,
Mm-hmm.
what it's doing with Hollywood. I'm actually utilizing these AI tools to work some projects. So, you know, I can't like go full protest against everything, but it has
Yeah.
its positives, but it has its negatives. As in where the strike came in with Hollywood not doing anything. A lot of people didn't really understand what was going on. That it was these studios wanted you guys to come in for one day, get a bunch of photos taken, and then you're their property for the rest of
Mm-hmm. Right.
eternity. And they
Yeah.
could put you in any movie, background, main actor,
Mm-hmm.
horror, comedy, whatever, and you don't get paid for it. And
Right.
that is, I mean, it was horrific. The fact that the studios had the cojones to even suggest that, but
Yeah,
luckily they fixed it
it's
with the
gonna
writing
be
too.
it's gonna be wild. I don't know what to do about all that. I mean, this career that I'm in is such a supply and demand, and there's so much supply of talent willing to do anything to get anywhere, and there always will be. And it's
Yeah.
very hard to. It's not like other unions where you have like auto workers that I don't know. It's just it's a different
It's a whole different world.
employer-employee relationship when you get into the arts. And all the reasons they could fire you are so subjective. They can make up any reason to fire you and then try to avoid prosecution for it. And I mean, they could fire you for politics. They could fire you for whatever. And it's just a very challenging career path. I'm so glad my husband
Mhm.
does well doing astrology and pays the bills seriously. And then I have the
Yeah.
freedom to, help him with that business while I'm still acting and while I'm doing the UFO appearances and working on my book because I think you just really have to diversify these days and it's a whole new thing. We'll see.
Yeah. You can't have all your eggs in one basket, as they
Right.
say. Now, at our event, shoot, stay. Let me pull. I don't have the website up, and then we should show the trailer. We'll show the promo
Okay.
actually. That'll explain. So I
Okay.
don't think we explain everything because we're going up the top of the hour. So right now I'm going to play the promo. So here you go, folks. Where is it? Here it is.
Have you ever attended a large conference or event with hundreds of attendees? One that features notable speakers that you hope to ask a single question or at least get an autograph or selfie? Well, the time has come for the opportunity of a lifetime. 1028 Productions and Entertainment is pleased to announce our exclusive inclusive events occurring each weekend in May and June 2025. These events will be held at a private 40-acre ranch in the White Mountains of Arizona. You and 19 other VIP guests will have a once-in-a-lifetime weekend to spend quality time with prominent speakers. The weekend includes discussions, activities, workshops, UFO watching, campfires, meals, barbecues, and nightly entertainment. Scheduled to attend are Tony Rodriguez, James C. Goodall, Michael Schratt,
You're going to DE 25.
Ben Chasteen, Brad Olson, David Nino Rodriguez, Ryan Patrick Burns.
Holy shit.
Oh yes, but wait, there's more. Travis Walton, Quincy Roser, Rex Bear, Brooks Agnew, Mike Barra, J.J. Ainsworth, Marina Seren.
So many to choose from.
Can I continue? Laura Eisenhower, Lily Nova, Daryl James, Aaron Kuhn, and Tyler Kiwala, Jeff Harman, Camille James Harman, John D'Souza, Tom Reed, Christopher LaPrath, and Michael Mazzola. Your registration fee covers meals, lodging, and open bar, and musical entertainment on Saturday and Sunday nights. Lodging will be provided at our local hotel, the Green Tree Inn, for said weekend. April 20th is the final deadline. For more detailed information and to register for one of these events, go to 1028productions.com/DEE25. Reserve your spot today, as there is limited availability.
So there you go, folks. So that's what's going on. And the cost is, it's not just a ticket cost. You're getting all those, hotel, food, and everything. But a lot of people, they'll spend more on a cruise or just a weekend in Vegas and stuff. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And, when people go to these, you can attest to this. People will go to these things. They'll spend, a lot of money getting hotels, usually not for a good discount. And they'll have to pay out the wazoo for meals and everything. And then they get to the event and there's like 300 to 1,000 people, depending where you're at. And you're lucky, if you stand in line and you get a question, that's if you remember your question when it's your turn, or you got to pay for a photo and to get an autograph. And you show your friends, hey, look, I'm with so-and-so. It's like, yeah, you paid for that. There's nothing to it. But at this event, you get to spend the weekend. You get to sit around the bonfire, look at the stars, and ask Camille questions, or her husband, or Mike Barra, or Travis Walton, and ask them the questions. Get into conversations. And I'll tell you, those selfies are going to mean a lot more than standing in front of a step and repeat wall. So, anyway, did I explain it?
I agree. It's fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to it because I love mingling and talking with people and sharing stories. And so I'm going to be doing one presentation that is my story and how I got involved in the subject matter, some of the things we talked about today, and writing for UFO Magazine, traveling and all that, and balancing acting, and some of the spiritual applications I put to the test. I worked with different healers, all of these interesting things that I did along the way that have their own stories. And then I'm going to do a totally different presentation about Hollywood and disclosure, because I'm in Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, which is a group of Hollywood people networking to make films, whether they're fiction or documentaries, that try to put the UFO subject matter in front of people with some degree of reality from what's coming from the actual people involved. But Hollywood has a very long history of making sci-fi films about UFOs that has some very interesting links to the intelligence agencies and shaping of the narrative, shall we say, for a soft disclosure through fiction.
Narrating history, basically.
Yes, and so some of that, but I'm also going to give a talk on other considerations about what we might be dealing with and whether our government has evolved their own view over time. And so maybe they put the ideas out in a certain way at one point, but then that morphed over time, and now they, have another way of presenting it. So it's just this kind of, how are we being shaped by others to perceive this? If we're not experiencing it directly, how are we being shaped as culture to interpret it, and whether that is a truthful shaping or not, and what could be the goal of that, and what could be the perils of that.
Yeah. Well, they've been. I've done shows on this, how the same thing, how it's soft disclosure in a sense. And
Mm-hmm.
as you say, these have elements of truth. One of my favorite is in Close Encounter, or not Close Up, Close Encounters of the Third
Mm-hmm.
Kind. We see the group of 12 people that are always wearing sunglasses and they're in flight suits, and then we see them in line near the end, for the big finale, and they're never mentioned who they are. It's like they're just kind of in the background the whole time. But we come to find Steven Spielberg was given intel about Project Serpo, where we did the
Mm.
exchange with humans
Mm-hmm.
to go
Mm-hmm.
back to their planet. And he incorporated that. He went home and wrote that into the script. Oh God, the guy that ran, the guy with the goatee and the pipe. He was the debunker guy.
J. Allen Hynek.
Uh, Thank you.
Yeah.
He's in the film. He's one of the
Right.
guys. They do a close up on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so
His
I
his
believe for
sons his
me, and
sons are in Hollywood Disclosure Alliance with me, and I've heard both of them give great talks.
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet
Paul
those are
and
good.
Joel Hynek.
Wow.
Great presenters.
So what is it they talk about
Well, they're
other
both
than
in
just their
Hollywood.
father?
They're both in Hollywood. They talk a lot about growing up with their father, and they tell all these wild stories about their youth,
Mhm.
which is great. And then uh, let's see. Okay, so Joel is in special effects. He actually worked on the Matrix bullet sequence, among other things.
Oh,
So he's
nice.
a special effects guy. And then Paul Hynek he's also in Hollywood, but he does a lot of like CFO work, and he's connected to Pepperdine University. He does a lot of things. So he's created a new classification system, like his dad invented the whole terminology for CE1 through 5. And
Yeah.
Paul now has a classification system that he explains when he gives his talk. So they're both very funny and very interesting, and they have a lot of pictures
Wow.
from growing up with their dad. Yeah, with like Jacques Vallée
I
hanging out at
know.
the house and all that. It's great. It's great stuff.
Wow. What a life to live. I mean, I'd love
I
to
know.
just pick their brain.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited. It's going to be a lot of fun. And your husband's going to be here on where is he?
We're
On the 16th.
on here. Yeah, with you here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I appreciate you coming on, and I'm going to email you something, a little shameless self promotion,
Okay.
and maybe something just fun to read.
Okay, great.
And what else? What else? There's one other thing. Was there another thing? I don't know. Sometimes when I get excited, my brain just is like going a million miles a second, and I can't keep up
I
sometimes.
do want to say if
So,
people are in LA, I am speaking at
uh,
a Hollywood Disclosure Alliance event on April 27th, live with 4 other women from the HDA. It's called the Women of HDA. And so that's if you live in Los Angeles, it won't be streamed or anything, but they could always ask me about
and
that
this is
through
only for
social
people in
media.
the business, or is this open to the public?
No, anybody can go, actually. Yeah.
Okay, okay. That's fantastic. Well, if I come to LA, I'll have to try one of those meetings and check it out. Just having the Hynix, that's just really, really cool.
You
So,
should join
well, thank
HDA.
you
You
so
should
much.
join. Well, we'll talk about that later.
I okay, we'll do that. We'll do that. But yeah, we're gonna keep talking about stuff.
Okay.
But I'm just really excited. Thank you so much for
You're
spending some
welcome.
time with me today and chatting. And yeah, I'm just giddy right now. It's so good talking with you.
Thank
So,
you
all
so
right. Well,
much.
thank you so much. Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely, anytime. And folks, remember, we've got this event coming up May and June. Get your tickets. It's limited 20 people only per weekend. So get on it now if you're going to do it. But remember, as long as we all lift each other up, we will all rise together. My name is Doc Skinner, the Doc Skinner Podcast, and we will be talking to you tomorrow. So join me here at 3:00. And I've got Brooks Agnew is going to be here tomorrow. So check it
Okay.
out. Y'all have a great day. Talk to you soon. Camille, I'll be emailing you. Take care.